Aotearoa, New Zealand, an island archipelago in the southern Pacific Ocean that, for flat earthers at least, is the last stop before they fall off the edge of the world. Discovered by humans a mere 800 years ago, it was a land unlike any other. Aside from an adventurous bat or two, land mammals never made it this far. This was a land of birds, and here they had survived in happy isolation for millions of years.
Pre-human New Zealand would have been amazing. It would be cloaked in a dense forest, dripping with birds. There'd be birds feasting on the ground, and at night time there'd be a constant hum of seabirds in the air.
This island paradise was filled with easily accessible food and completely free of ground predators. Walking or jumping was more energy efficient, and in time many species became completely flightless. In total, 31 species of flightless birds roamed New Zealand. These included birds like Takahē, 4-kilogram grass guzzlers that lived throughout the land, and the Kākāpō, arguably the weirdest parrot in the world. Their nocturnal lifestyle and perfect camouflage led them to become one of the commonest birds in the forest. But when people arrived, everything changed. Maori, the first humans to discover New Zealand, had a significant impact on the native fauna. Following their arrival, several species became extinct, including the giant moa. But it was the arrival of Europeans that did most damage. They cleared land for farming and brought mammals like rats, goats, deer, and rabbits. Unchecked by predators, rabbits soon reached plague proportions. To control them, the government introduced stoats, ferrets, and weasels. But they failed to consider the full impact they would have on the country's native wildlife. Species like the laughing owl, the huia, the New Zealand thrush or piopio, and the Takahē soon joined the growing list of extinct species. So when a man called Jeffrey Orbell produced these photographs, it caused quite a stir. They showed a creature that had been extinct for half a century. High in the mountains, his small team of explorers had found Takahē. The rediscovery made headlines around the world. They had found the last wild population. Today, the Murchison Mountains is still home to the only wild population of Takahē, numbering about 130 birds. The fact that they vanished here for over 50 years gives you an idea of how difficult it is to keep track of them in the wild. Helicopters are the best way to get around. This is a difficult, dangerous, and expensive operation, requiring a minimum of 3 rangers and a highly skilled pilot. A small number of Takahē are fitted with transmitters. It's one of these birds the team are tracking.
Similar level to us, I think, but down the valley. Has that got a transmitter? Yep, that is it. Okay. All yours, Jace.
Currently in the Murchison Mountains, there are 51 Takahē with VHF transmitters attached. That's roughly about a third of the population.
Where is it? Just come up 2 metres. Is that you?
Come in your way.
Just for a break.
Whose way? Whose way? One leg. I've got 2 legs.
Well done,
Good
Nikki.
work.
Yeah, no wonder we were having trouble.
They've also got a mortality switch in them. It's like a mercury movement switch. That means that if the transmitter doesn't move for 12 hours, then it's either fallen off the bird or the bird has died, and it'll go to 80 beats per minute.
What do you want to weigh over for?
Conditions medium. Actually, medium poor, almost on the poor side.
The poor condition is no surprise. It's a reflection of the tough landscape in which the Takahē live. Fitting transmitters to birds is only one part of the work being done to ensure the continuing survival of the Takahē's last wild population. Monitoring Takahē is important, but so is controlling the creatures that kill them. Over the past 100 years, an army of predators has been slowly advancing over this mountain landscape. Throughout New Zealand, a variety of techniques are used to control introduced pests like stoats, but in the Murchison Mountains, recovery teams rely on an extensive trap network. The traps can catch up to 2 animals at a time, so they need to be cleared and reset. This arduous task falls to the Mammalian Corrections Unit.
Today, there are 3,500 stoat traps in the Murchison Mountains, so that covers an area of 50,000 hectares. The trapping certainly helps reduce the damage that they do, but it doesn't negate it in a stoat plague year.
The trappers keep a detailed account of their catch, and what they've noticed is alarming. There's been a huge increase in rat numbers. Their yearly tally is almost 5,000 more than just 5 years ago. Perhaps more worryingly is the rise in stoat numbers. They've increased by nearly 500%. But the dead stoats are an important resource. Instead of being thrown away, the carcasses are used to further the understanding of stoat behaviour. Scientists at the University of Otago have been studying the diet of these tenacious carnivores.
So I normally take from the stomach, I take all of the intestines, all of the gut, right down to the rectum.
Several studies have been done on stoat diet in the past, but all relied on the examination of a stoat's stomach contents.
I suspect that's a rat.
The problem here is that stomach contents only show what the stoat has eaten in the few hours before it entered the trap.
Ah, look, eggshell.
Now, a new method of tissue analysis means they can discover what stoats have eaten over a period of weeks. This year-long study revealed that rats and mice were top of the stoat's menu. It also revealed that when rat numbers dropped, hungry stoats turned to other prey, and in the Murchison Mountains, that's Takahē. It's vital that the recovery team know when this starts happening. The team gets great information on predator numbers from the traps, but they also need to keep a close eye on Takahē. They can't do this from the ground. This light aircraft is fitted with a special tracking system. Once every 2 months, the plane flies a set route over the mountains and tracks the birds' movements.
And it's really important to keep a close eye on that wild population and have those birds with transmitters on, because we need to look at the bigger picture over a long time frame.
The signal tells the team if the transmitters are moving or not. Static signals are followed up to determine if the transmitter's fallen off or if the bird is dead. Tracking from this high vantage point gives them invaluable data and shows them any long-term trends.
Adult mortality in a normal year is reasonably high. It's a very rugged place to live in. We normally lose 10 to 15% of our adults every year, mostly through avalanches, slips, floods, and then in years when you get high stoat numbers, then that mortality can get up to 20%. The long-term trend ever since their rediscovery really has been slow decline.
The only wild population of Takahē is in trouble, and the last thing Jason and the recovery team want is for the Takahē to follow the Kākāpō out of Fiordland. Once a species has gone from a landscape, it's very hard to get them back. 50 years ago, there was another bird struggling to survive in Fiordland. The Kākāpō, a strange nocturnal parrot, was the focus of a desperate search and rescue mission. The Wildlife Service had been tasked with saving them from extinction. They found 18 birds living high in the rugged mountains of Fiordland, but every single one of them was male.
Male Kākāpō are a bit bigger than the females, and maybe up to about a third bigger, so they would have been less vulnerable to predation by stoats. Plus also the females would have nested, and quite a lot of them probably would have been killed inside the nests.
A handful of the surviving males were transferred to island sanctuaries as the desperate search for females continued. The break they needed came just a few years later on Rakiura, Stewart Island. Here, they discovered a population of males and females.
In those days of Stewart Island, the high was finding that population of birds, estimated to be around 200 birds. But it quickly became apparent that up to 50% were being killed by cats.
The Rakiura survivors were also caught and transferred to small island sanctuaries. At their lowest point, the Kākāpō population numbered just 51. Whenua Hou, also known as Codfish Island, became the Kākāpō's new home.
Whenua Hou has always had a strong recognition in the connection of Rakiura Māori, Ngāi Tahu iwi. If we look at it now, I think that would be very close to what Aotearoa would have looked like prior colonisation.
Whenua Hou is managed by a committee of local Māori, conservation board members and Department of Conservation staff. Today, the island has been free from introduced species for over 30 years, and the native forest ecosystem is thriving. It's the main Kākāpō population, and one of just 3 islands that hold breeding birds.
The camouflage of Kākāpō is amazing. You can literally stand right in front of them and not see them until they blink.
Their forest colouring would have kept them safe in pre-human New Zealand. Removing a wild population from their natural home is always a last resort, but the creation of this isolated predator-free forest wilderness was the only way to save the Kākāpō. The thick bush is perfect for them, even if it does make things difficult for the recovery team. Kākāpō are fitted with backpack transmitters very similar to the ones worn by Takahē. The difference here is that every Kākāpō has one. With only 147 birds, it's vital that the recovery team know every individual. Today, they're looking for a very special bird called Gulliver.
Gulliver is perhaps our most important Kākāpō of all. He is of Fiordland descent. So he is the son of the only Kākāpō which survived to breed that came from Fiordland. The Fiordland Kākāpō are more genetically diverse. They have genes which the other Kākāpō from Rakiura do not have. Gulliver's different in that we know that he's got some disease resistance genes that no other Kākāpō have. Those genes may mean that in, say, 10 years' time, when a new disease comes along, you need those genes to be resistant to the disease. So it could even mean the survival of the species, just those 2 genes.
Gulliver's been spotted. Diggs's first priority is to get Gulliver out without hurting him. His second priority is to get him out without getting hurt himself. The first part of the mission is a success. Now Gulliver needs a thorough health check. A breeding season is coming, and it's vital that he's in top condition to attract a mate and pass on his disease-resistant genes.
We do a general health check of the Kākāpō as well. We check things like their eyes and their ears and their wings and their body condition. We're looking for any obvious injuries or any obvious signs of disease from the outside. Gulliver was looking in really good shape, and so we had high hopes that he was as ready as ever to be able to breed.
On Whenua Hou, Kākāpō breeding season is triggered by a native conifer tree known as rimu. Somehow, Kākāpō can tell when these trees will provide them with enough fruit to allow them to breed, an event that usually happens once every 3 or 4 years. This may seem like a slow breeding cycle, but Kākāpō can live to 90 years of age. It's a complex ancient partnership that scientists are only just beginning to understand. But this year, warmer than average winter temperatures have set the conditions for a mega mast, a 1 in 20 year event where trees produce a massive overabundance of fruits and seeds.
I'd actually never seen rimu fruit ripen on Whenua Hou in large numbers, so to see the floors, the forest floor and the tracks just carpeted in red was quite amazing. Rimu fruit has been analysed and been shown to be nutritionally very, very rich as a bit of a superfood.
This 1 in 20-year event has the potential to trigger a breeding season that could double the Kākāpō population. With just 147 birds, it's vital they make the most of it. The good news is, Gulliver, the bird with Fiordland genes, has been visiting one of the island's high spots. He's cleared a track and dug small scrapes or bowls in the ground. This is known as a track and bowl system. It's a male Kākāpō's breeding arena. The summer performance begins just after dark. This is his stage, and from here he serenades the island's females with his unique voice.
Kākāpō males have a complex ear sac in their neck that he can inflate. He becomes a very oval looking shape, kind of like a football, I guess. And with that, he produces a very low frequency, resonant booming.
So booming is a display call for the males. It's a way of advertising their presence and maybe something about their fitness to the females.
The first time I ever heard a Kākāpō booming, it just blew my mind. And it does every time. That doesn't change. I don't think it probably changes for anybody.
But for male Kākāpō, the booming is only half their repertoire. They also ching.
The chinging is a more short-range call, we think. We think it may be to help the females locate the males better than the booming call, which can be quite hard to pinpoint.
They still don't know what female Kākāpō look for in a mate, whether it's the booming or the chinging, or whether there's something unseen. But whatever it is, on Whenua Hou, every night is ladies' night. Females have the final say on which males will mate.
Kākāpō don't form pairs. The females will travel around the male bowl sites. They'll often visit several different males before deciding which one to mate with. The females choose who they want to mate with the males, and then that's the male's entire part of raising the chicks done.
Unfortunately, with Kākāpō, a mating does not guarantee fertile eggs. In most breeding seasons, 50% of eggs can be infertile. It's a problem often associated with critically endangered species. The recovery team want to get as many chicks as they can from this monster breeding season, and they're willing to get very hands-on to ensure that happens. Scientists have found that the most promiscuous females produced a higher number of fertile eggs, and over the last few years they've been artificially assisting them.
Some females mate with the same male, but some females mate with a different male. And if they mate with a different male, the chances of fertility are about 90% or more. So it's really worth their while fertility-wise to mate with two different males.
So the team came up with a plan to replicate this promiscuous female behaviour.
The way we can think of to solve that problem is using artificial insemination.
Having selected a genetically matched male, the first step is to extract a good quality sperm sample.
We're looking at the quality of the sperm that we get from the males, so making sure that it's not too deformed, making sure that it's concentrated enough and it's a big enough sample.
We had, I think, 21 adult males on Whenua Hou this year, and we collected from 18 of them. There were 8 birds that we were getting really good samples from that we could use for insemination.
The next step, once we've got a good sperm sample, is to get it to the female. We have to be able to find her and to be able to catch her. That's the next challenge.
There's only a 3 or 4 day window between a female Kākāpō's first mating and when she will lay her first egg. The team need to work quickly.
So we could have put a lot of effort into getting a good sperm sample, sometimes from several males, walked an hour or more to get to the female, and then find she's right at the top of a tree and we can't catch her.
Success. Now the team need to work quickly. It's a stressful time for the bird. The quicker this is over and done, the better.
No bird likes being put on its back with humans around it, but it's a very quick process.
So for the female, we actually need to get that sperm sample into her oviduct. So this year we did 16 inseminations on 13 females. It's a long time until we know whether that insemination has worked. The female will nest, she'll lay eggs, and we'll find out whether they're fertile or not. And then we have to wait for genetic confirmation of who the father is before we know whether the artificial insemination has worked.
The recovery team has done everything they can do. The rest is down to the female. Over the next few days, she'll find herself a dry underground nest and hopefully lay 3 fertile eggs. On the mainland, the safest place for Takahē to lay eggs is behind a fence. This is Orokonui Eco Sanctuary, one of over 80 predator-free eco-sanctuaries found around New Zealand. They're specially designed to keep native species safe and introduced predators out.
About 2010, there was a real change of strategy from within the Takahē program to work towards building up sanctuary sites across the country, which spreads our disease and genetic risk for Takahē, and it also ensures a safe place for Takahē to breed. We're very lucky with Takahē fertility. They're still quite a fertile species, so generally as long as they've got a safe environment to breed, they'll do so.
The great thing about Takahē is they seem to be as happy eating European grasses as they are tucking into tussock. And with a top-up of specially formulated pellets, they do rather well. Eco-sanctuary Takahē are used to help prop up the Murchison Mountain population. This year's largest chick has been earmarked for a return to the wild.
The eco-sanctuaries are fantastic, but the birds don't have all the skills that they need there to survive in the wild. A lot of Takahē behaviour is learned behaviour, so in the wild they'll learn that off their parents and their siblings.
No.
We run them down that fence.
Okay, now let's get on to the other one.
So when we take birds from eco-sanctuaries, they have to go through Takahē school and be buddied up with a bunch of young birds who have learnt those skills from their parents.
Pretty chilled, isn't it? Very chilled.
This young Takahē is big and fast, but he wouldn't last long in the wild. He's still got to learn some important survival skills. And to do that, he needs to head to Burwood Takahē Centre.
So Burwood is a Department of Conservation facility in a tussock area which replicates the Takahē's wild site, and it is used as a safe environment for breeding pairs to help us with reproduction, and it also provides us with facilities to train birds that are on their way to the wild.
Here, a number of pens have been created in the red tussock landscape. Each pen holds a breeding pair and their chicks. It's these pairs that will become the foster families for the sanctuary birds.
When a juvenile bird comes into Burwood, it gets fostered into an established Burwood family. So it'll be a mum, dad, and possibly some other chicks.
The introduction takes place under close supervision in a small pen known as Alcatraz.
This can be quite a stressful time because it has to be done quite carefully. The new mum and dad may not be quite as accepting of the new chicks as we would like. So the worst case scenario for us would be putting a young juvenile bird in with a new family, and for mum or dad Takahē to not appreciate that new introduction and causing some serious harm or possibly even killing that young chick.
The size of the new addition could well be seen as a threat by the adult. The juvenile needs to learn his place. A submissive bow to the new parents would acknowledge their dominance, but instead, he fights back.
Watch really closely. We don't want any sustained negative behaviour, but we will allow a certain level of chasing and pecking to occur, and this is important because it allows the hierarchy within the group to be established.
Good behaviours we're looking for are sort of submissive behaviours towards the parents from the chicks, and the parents being dominant but not too much chasing.
The submissive bow means this young Takahē has learnt his first lesson.
So once we're happy with the foster, that everything looks settled, then we'll move the group back into the breeding pens, and then life will go on as usual for the Takahē family. The parents will teach both their own chicks and the new chicks basic Takahē skills.
Once we've got the family set up and they're learning all those important feeding skills, the next most important skills that they need to learn is the breeding skills, how to become a good Takahē parent. So they'll stay with the parents through that sort of nesting stage and the early hatching stage. So they actually help and share with the incubation and the hatching of the chicks and looking after the young chicks. So once they've got experience in doing that, then we can pull them away from their parents, and then they will be sort of released into the wild in the sort of late springtime, early summertime.
For Takahē, one of the things I'll learn first is really how to forage for that tussock.
Tussock is a grass native to New Zealand, and it grows in some very large plants which survive for a very long period of time.
When you pull a tussock tiller out of the ground, it looks like a spring onion. It's got sort of that white base to it, and that's the bit that they eat.
Their new survival skills mean they're now ready to return to the wild. But the wild isn't ready for them. Trappers in the Murchison Mountains have reported a significant drop in rat numbers. The team knows that wild Takahē are vulnerable. Hungry stoats could decimate the population. What's more, Sky Tracker data has picked up several Takahē transmitters in mortality mode.
If you start to find birds with their mortality signals, once you start to pick them up, you know that it's going to be a bad year.
In 2007, they lost nearly 60% of their wild birds to stoats. They don't want that to happen again. They need to confirm the reason for the deaths. Was it a winter storm, or are stoats hunting Takahē?
They don't always die from predation, but when you start to see more of birds with those telltale signs that the back of the neck and the head have been eaten at, then you start to know that stoats are having an effect.
The Takahē's only wild population is in serious trouble. To release youngsters now could well be giving them a death sentence.
At the moment, the Murchison Mountains isn't sustainable. We think that the birds would do a lot better in a more benign environment, provided predators were low enough density.
Takahē Takahē need a new wild site, ideally without predators. But this type of wilderness is hard won. To understand why it's important, you need look no further than Whenua Hou. 30 years ago, its forests were cleared of introduced predators. Today, the ecosystem is thriving. It's an island of birds and home to the Kākāpō's main breeding population. This year's megamast has encouraged almost every female to breed. Natural matings mixed with the artificial insemination work have given the team a remarkable opportunity, and they're making the most of it.
Because they started nesting so early, which we've never had before in such synchrony, we made the most of that and decided that we'd take the eggs, incubate them in incubators, and hand raise them and get mums to nest again. So we had this fantastic opportunity to essentially double the production.
The eggs from this female's first nest are already in an incubator. As the team hoped, she's mated again and laid a second clutch. Deidre's here to carefully remove the egg and see if it's fertile. Deidre wants this female to stay on the nest, so she replaces the real egg with a dummy. The Kākāpō's placid nature and choice of nest site highlights the reason they're unable to exist in the presence of predators.
Infertility is a huge problem for Kākāpō, and it's most likely due to lack of genetic diversity.
On average, about 50% of all eggs laid are infertile. But there's an easy way to check.
Yeah, this is the yolk top here. But there's absolutely no development in that yolk. It's just a plain yolk. There's no blood vessels. Yeah, infertile egg.
I'm always really hopeful that we'll see a beautiful little embryo developing. Yeah, it's a real shame when you see an empty egg.
Unfortunately, this egg won't hatch. But back at base, they're looking after the ones that will.
The good thing this year was that we had more eggs than we'd ever had before by quite some distance, and we had more fertile eggs than ever.
Most of the time we would have had up to 30 eggs in the incubator. We got to the stage where we were hatching regularly a chick most days. Of the 86 chicks that hatched this year, 81 of them hatched in the incubators. This year we normally had somebody looking after the eggs, and then as soon as the chicks hatched, that passed on to another team that was hand-rearing the chicks. Soon after hatching, they're fed 10 times a day for the first couple of days, and then that gradually starts to reduce. But that first week is quite intense with little chicks.
But they don't stay long. 3 days is enough time for the team to ensure that the newest arrivals are fit and well. After that, the best care that these young chicks can get is from a mother Kākāpō.
The chick gets put back into the nest, and for the first few days we'll check that chick every single night. We'll wait at the nest until the mother leaves. When she leaves, we'll go and give the chick a health check and weigh that chick, and we'll do that every night. And some of the mothers had never even seen a chick before. When we look at the chick, the main thing is the weight, and we weigh the chick and we plot it on a graph to see if the weight growth is as expected.
That's quite good for that chick.
The large crop of rimu fruit means all the chicks are putting on weight. If the bumper season continues like this, they could add an additional 80 Kākāpō to the population. This remote mountain valley is where Takahē were rediscovered in 1948. It's a harsh, dangerous environment, and despite an extensive trap network, introduced predators still kill Takahē. An ongoing stoat plague means youngsters can't be released to prop up the wild population. It's becoming increasingly difficult to ensure their continued survival in the wild.
Whenever we go into the Murchison Mountains, we'll see sign of stoats. That's really disheartening. Seeing that sign along with the decline in bird life in general in there is quite sad.
In order to save the species, the recovery team need to identify a new wild site and establish a second wild population.
If you want to find a release site or a new home for an endangered species, the first thing you need to look at is what does this species actually need?
Tussock plays a big part in the lives of Takahē. They nest in it, they hide in it, and they eat it. But not all tussocks the same. A number of samples were collected and sent for analysis. The results revealed the nutrient level of Takahē Valley's tussock and gave them a baseline to compare to other potential sites. With the study complete, the team could now assess the potential of other sites around New Zealand. Kahurangi National Park, 700 kilometres north of the Murchison Mountains, showed most promise.
One of the biggest differences between Takahē Valley and the Guland Downs that we found is a much higher abundance of Chionochloa conspicua in the forest. These plants have been effectively eliminated by deer grazing in Takahē Valley. This plant is known to be another very important food source, which is why we are quite excited to find so many over here, because we expect them to use those as supplementation during winter as well.
As well as additional species of tussock, their analysis confirmed that nutrient levels here were similar to Takahē Valley. Like the Murchison Mountains, Kahurangi National Park also has an extensive trapping network. But here, they've taken predator control a step further. These small green pellets are 1080, a poison used extensively in New Zealand to control mammal pests like rats, stoats and possums. It's been used here for many years and had significant success limiting predator numbers.
So the fact that 1080 has been used alongside the trap network that was in place across the whole of Kahurangi National Park meant that stoat numbers were very low density, much lower than what we see in Fiordland.
Kahurangi National Park was the brave new wilderness they'd been looking for. The tussock was good and introduced predators were under control. Preparations for the relocation of Takahē were given a green light. The recovery team on Whenua Hou have also been busy. They've had more eggs and more chicks than ever before. After hatching, the young Kākāpō were hand-fed for 3 days before being returned to nests in the wild. Youngsters grow fast, and keeping them fed has been a big task for the mother Kākāpō. The recovery teams have been keeping a close eye on them and their chicks. Most breeding seasons they have 1 chick per nest. This year they have several nests with 3 chicks.
By late March we had 72 chicks. Never had anything like that before. The mums are phenomenal hard workers. The amount of times they come and go from their nests, they're climbing the trees 15 or 20 metres high. They're gathering huge cropfuls of rimu fruit, returning to the nest, feeding the chicks, maybe staying with them for 20 or 30 minutes, feeding and going out to doing it all again. But while she's raising her chicks, she's just burning so much energy and losing so much condition. By the time the chicks are fledging, most of the mums are around 1 kilogram. They've lost almost half their body weight.
As soon as mum heads out, the recovery team move in. The megamast means there's ample food around, and most of the island's chicks have been doing really well. But this chick is worrying them. It's been losing weight, and they're not sure why.
Okay, so we've had a bit of a weight loss because it's 1.325 with the bag.
It's a further drop, but of more concern is her breathing.
Weight loss is just one factor, but when we see that combined with things like breathing issues, maybe a slight wheeze, then we'll be watching that chick very closely.
The continual weight loss mixed with the difficult breathing means something is very wrong. The call's made to airlift the chick to a wildlife hospital on the mainland. 300 kilometres north of Whenua Hou lies the city of Dunedin. Here, a state-of-the-art facility has been established to treat New Zealand's native species. The vets are familiar with Kākāpō and ready for the arrival of the sick chick.
That little chick was flown off the island and brought up to us and was in quite severe respiratory distress. There was a huge mobilisation to try and get to the bottom of it. It was quite stressful for us, and I would imagine the poor little birds pulling them straight out of their mother's nest and sort of shoving them into a human facility. We did try our best to stabilise and keep her alive. Sadly, within 36 hours, she actually passed away. I performed a post-mortem, and when I cut into these lungs, these spores just kind of poofed into my face. There was something really serious going on with this chick, obviously, that it had a really, really intensely severe case of Aspergillosis. It was the worst case of fungal pneumonia I've ever seen.
The diagnosis provided little comfort on the island. The disease was not supposed to be contagious, but on Whenua Hou, more and more Kākāpō were losing condition. Worryingly, some adults also seemed to be affected. Hoki, a mature breeding female, had stopped gathering food for her chicks. Blood tests showed she was also very unwell.
So we got to the stage where we just had to start sending birds to hospital for complete checkups, for CT scans and determining whether they were infected or not. We're going to send a lot of birds off, and probably half of them are going to die, maybe more.
CT scans revealed that 9 of the 10 birds sent to the Dunedin Wildlife Hospital had lesions with different levels of severity.
Even though they looked healthy, Aspergillosis is quite a strange disease, is that sometimes a bird will look healthy, and then suddenly will just deteriorate. It was quite terrifying knowing that we had birds that did have this disease and whether we would actually be able to save them.
We could well lose 20, 30, 40 birds. It was hard to know where it would stop.
Nature is cruel, and new viruses or diseases can be devastating. That's why it's so important to have more than one wild population. No one knows this more than the Takahē team. Several of Burwood's Takahē pairs have been chosen to travel to a new site in the hope of establishing a second wild population.
The whole team we felt, I guess on the one hand, very nervous about putting so many birds in this new site. A lot of unknowns there.
You know, we were sort of doing all the research to make sure we knew as much as possible, but I guess the real test is when you put the birds in there and see how they do.
Just 75 years ago, Takahē were considered extinct. The recovery team have spent years protecting the last wild site in Fiordland and using eco-sanctuaries around the country to increase numbers. But their biggest goal has always been to establish a second wild population. The day has finally arrived. Kākāpō National Park, with its lush tussock grasslands and low predator numbers, will become the Takahē's second home.
Releasing those first Takahē was an incredible experience for myself and everyone in the team. There's nothing like seeing a Takahē in the wild and seeing one wandering the tussock in a brand new site where they hadn't been for centuries was just mind-blowing.
Like so many horror stories of species being pushed to the brink of extinction, we need good news sometimes. This was one of the days where we got these good news.
It was amazing seeing those Takahē in a tussock environment without the fences. Yeah, so pretty proud of our contribution to making that happen.
But later in the day, we actually heard some birds calling, and that was when it really hit home, was because you're like, that was Takahē happily calling away to each other in the wild in Kākāpō National Park. That was special.
Takahē have their second wild home. It's a huge step for the recovery programme that will help secure the future of this remarkable species and provide a valuable addition to the brave new wilderness of Kākāpō National Park. That's a sharp contrast to the story on Whenua Hou. The recovery team have been forced to take many young chicks from their mothers. Several nests are now empty, and over 40 birds have been airlifted off the island.
We were just all quite flat after being out that night and bringing chicks in and bringing them back, because you know that the mum's going back to the nest and there's no birds there, and that's going to have some stress on her.
Of the 42 birds evacuated, 16 had Aspergillosis. The sick birds received intensive care at wildlife hospitals around New Zealand. Miraculously, they only lost 7 individuals.
The mortality this year was, even in spite of having an Aspergillosis crisis, the chick mortality was not as high as sometimes you anticipate.
Thanks to the early evacuation from the island, disaster had been averted.
It's just incredible. We've been part of a season where 72 chicks have survived. Nothing beats sending them off to go back home.
Nice to say the tide has turned, and now we have an influx of transport, planes and helicopters coming back, bringing birds back to us that have been cleared. The relief is profound, really.
The highlight for me for this season is the fact that Gulliver has had chicks. He's got 3 healthy offspring. They're genetically very valuable. They're genetically potentially the saviour of the species in the future. So, yeah, that's a really amazing achievement this year.
3 months ago, it looked like these chicks were going to die. But now, thanks to the work of conservationists and vet staff around the country, they're about to embark on a new adventure and take their first steps in the pristine forest of Whenua Hou. Despite the Aspergillosis outbreak, the mega breeding season has been an outstanding success.
So the population increased from 147 birds prior to the breeding season to 209 today. Yeah, where next is our biggest question for Kākāpō right now, but ultimately the long-term vision is to restore Kākāpō so that they're flooding our valleys and on the hilltops around our cities and towns throughout New Zealand.
People are working together to achieve a common goal. On this isolated archipelago, they're not just saving species, they're saving entire ecosystems. In a world where the environment seems to be under constant attack, New Zealand is setting an example. Every brave new wilderness they create heals the land and helps restore a natural balance, a balance on which the whole world depends.